Everyone, Dr. Brent Siebold here with Make It Happen at Arizona State University. Really excited about today's session. We've got my close colleague, Marissa Scragg, is here from the J. Orrin Edson Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute at Arizona State University, and we are big fans of managing risk in the realm of entrepreneurship and innovation. If you happen to look up the definition of entrepreneurship in the dictionary, you're going to see risk right in your face. And if you're an engineer, like many of us are here, I'm affiliated with the IRA Fulton Schools of Engineering. Sometimes it's difficult to take risks as an engineer or as any disciplined person in the realm of managing new inventions or new innovations. So really important concept for all of us, regardless of our career paths, to be understanding how to approach these tricky topics, risk being one of them. So Marissa, thanks so much for being here. Do you want to say hi to everybody?
I do. Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here today. Thank you, Brent, for having me and for running the slide deck for me.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go ahead and share the slides and we'll get going.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So again, my name is Marissa Scragg. I am the program manager for the Risk Innovation Nexus. I have been the program manager for about 2 years, and I was brought on board to take the ideas and many years of work done by Dr. Andrew Maynard and make that actionable and translate, again, all of his work into presentations that I can share with you. And as you'll see kind of throughout the presentation, resources and tools that you can use to start planning for risks in your own life. And so again, I'm able to do this work in collaboration with the School for the Future of Innovation and Society, which houses the Risk Innovation Lab, again, collaborating with Edson Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute. So it's an exciting world to kind of be in. I do want to let you know that I will be sharing throughout the presentation a couple links here in the chat back to our website and to some of these resources. And as Brent mentioned earlier, please feel free to also utilize the chat for any questions, any pressing issues. Otherwise, I know we've got a lot of time at the end for Q&A as well. So what is risk innovation? It's a new way of understanding and anticipating the unforeseen events that might get in the way of your organization's intended success. So I'll read that definition, and then let's go to the next slide and talk about what that really means. What we are here to do is help diversify and expand your lenses by introducing new tools and approaches. And so when you begin a project, when you start a new company, if you're an entrepreneur at your, your current company, we're really good at 1 or 2 or 3 things, right? We come with this focus and say, I'm going to build this. I know exactly how to do it. I'm going to focus and go. But in doing so, using that lens, there are maybe, thank you, some other ideas and things that we're not seeing. And so risk innovation is here not to suggest to you, sorry, can you go back? Not to suggest to you that you avoid risk whatsoever. That's not what this is about. This is about seeing what's out there, recognizing it, learning from it, planning for it, and what we like to call navigating your risk landscape. We're encouraging success while still benefiting society and without compromising areas of value to your enterprise or your project. If you're not an entrepreneur starting something new, the risk innovation approach is awesome for project management, product development. So you can really take this with you and utilize the risk innovation approach throughout the different types of work that you may be doing. It's looking at stakeholders and what's most important to them. We're looking at unconventional risks and an unconventional way. And so conventional risk mitigation suggests making a list of what could possibly go wrong and then plotting it on a map. What has the highest probability and would have the highest impact, start planning for and mitigating that. Conventional risk mitigation has its place. It definitely belongs. It's important for you to consider. But it does not often consider, again, these unconventional approaches. It doesn't often consider risks that are hard to quantify, social and ethical risks, as well as risks within your own organization and the systems around it. So here we are connecting ethical and responsible innovation with value growth by looking at risk as a threat to value. And I'm excited to go into more detail about all that throughout the slide. So, okay, I'm ready for the next one, Brent. Laying the foundation for the risk innovation mindset, it's a simple equation. What is important? This is a slide with animations, Brent. So when I read the question, will you click? So what is important? That's the values. To whom is that important? Those are your stakeholders. And we've actually broken stakeholders down into enterprise, or you, your project, your organization, customers, community, and investors. We'll talk more about stakeholders later. So we've got what is important, to whom is that important, and then what could threaten that value. Those are the orphan risks, or the unconventional risks that we'll be looking at throughout our presentation. Go ahead and click on that. Thank you. And then how to respond with agility. Those are our tools. I'll be sharing as many of those tools with you today as I can. And then the equation, one more click, Brent. All of those things together is the risk innovation mindset. We'll be looking at this equation throughout the presentation today. But again, really, we'll start with stakeholders and value. So I'm going to walk you through the risk innovation approach by actually looking at a case study, Google's Project Maven. This is a contract that Google entered into with the Department of Defense, 2016-ish timeframe. And so essentially the Department of Defense contracted with Google, so Google would create military drone data that was more responsive and therefore more lethal, right? This is for the DoD to be used in wartime using AI and computer learning. So Google enters into this contract, but employees really bristle at that, believing that Google should not be in the business of war. Another animated slide here, Brent. So let's go ahead and click through the timeline. In January, so the project, the contract entered into with the Department of Defense 2016, and internally Google executives are wanting to keep it pretty hush-hush. If you don't know, Google's motto is do the right thing. And so I don't know what happened here, but they had an idea of keeping this contract as kind of secretive as possible. But of course, as it will, project information spreads throughout the company. And by April, and here we're in 2017, there's a petition signed by over 4,000 Google employees, including some of their top engineers. And as a result of this petition, and that it's amplified by media, social media, right? This is all over the news, et cetera. By June, Google decides to walk away from or not extend the contract with the Department of Defense. So they're walking away from a $250 million contract. So not only do they lose employees lose some of this reputation for doing the right thing, potentially, that they've built up, but they've also lost money in the process. And so the question we're asking and looking at this case study is, how could this happen? And so the case studies that we write at the Risk Innovation Nexus, we actually map out the company's risk landscape. And this is something, a tool that I can share with you as well. The mapping consists of, here on the left-hand side, looking at your stakeholders. Again, as I mentioned, the enterprise, investors, customers, and community, and what's important to them. So you'll see I've noted some areas of value there on the left-hand side. We'll go into more detail in the next couple of slides. And then we've plotted out the risks. And so we've got in the social and ethical factors column, risks like ethics, perception, and worldview. And in the organizations and systems column, risks like reputation and trust, and organizational values and culture. I'll talk more to you about what those mean. But if we go to the next slide, what we can see from this landscape is that, sorry, one more up, Brent. Thanks. The big hole here is the unintended consequences of emerging technologies. And why do I point this out? It's because Google is a tech company. And so what risks did they have pretty much totally covered? No risks in the tech section here of our risk landscape. So when I talked earlier about diversifying and expanding the lens through which you see your business or your project or your product creation, it's not just looking at the things you're great at, the tech, in Google's case, but also these social factors and organizational factors. Okay, so on to the next slide. You see we've got the equation again. Let's go ahead and apply it to the Google Project Maven case study. So what was of value here? One of the values, working for a company that fosters a culture and reputation for doing the right thing. Again, I'm leaning into Google's motto, but a big company with a big motto like that might draw employees who are in alignment with that. And so the stakeholders we're talking about here, this falls into the enterprise category, and we're talking about Google employees. What's the risk? A failure to operationalize your organizational values. So you say we're going to do the right thing, and then you do something that may or may not be in alignment with that. Entering into a contract with the Department of Defense, for example. And so the orphan risks in name might be organizational values and culture, worldview, and ethics. And again, we'll talk a bit more about those. What kind of tools could Google have used to possibly avoid the result of their Project Maven? I should caveat here, of course, that I do not work for Google. I don't know what they did internally, but in thinking about the risks of org values and culture, worldview, and ethics, and in thinking about how those might apply to you, to your projects, the company you work for, or the company you're creating, a commitment to transparency really could have been a benefit here, right? We saw that Google intentionally kept this contract a secret from employees. So how does transparency look in your organization? Capturing and integrating employee values into project decision criteria through time. Whew, that's a mouthful. But what that really means is looking at your employees as stakeholders as well. We so often look at our customers or who the end result is benefiting, but not the people doing the work. And so integrating employee and other stakeholders, but employee values into your projects could have been a big benefit here for Google. Okay, let's look at one more equation, still on the Google Project Maven case study. Another value, attracting and retaining top talent. That's super important to Google. So again, we're in the stakeholder box of enterprise, but also investors, right? We want, as people invested in this company, to keep the bigwigs. We want those senior engineers to stick around. What's the risk here? An internal conflict exacerbated by media is what we saw with Google. And so again, giving name to some of those risks: organizational values and culture, perception, reputation, and trust. What kinds of tools or what kinds of action steps might Google or any company worried about internal conflict being exacerbated by the media? First and foremost, safeguarding your organizational values and protecting the interests of stakeholders is always a good thing. And it helps maintain your own reputation when you consider what's important to your stakeholders. And because we know with the ubiquity of media and social media, it means that perceptions can change in the blink of an eye. Stories get amplified like this. Okay, so we've walked through, and let me pause very quickly to share with you in the chat a link to the riskinnovation.org website, specifically to our case studies page, where you'll find a full write-up of the Google Project Maven case study, along with a few others. And while I'm here in the chat, we're just about to talk a little bit more about Orphan Risks. So I'm also sending you a link, again, back to a page on our website that goes through all of the orphan risk definitions. We got a lot there. But before we talk about risk, just as you saw in the equation, and just as I began my presentation, risk innovation is all about value. It's at the core of what we do, not just creating value. And when you're developing a new product, project, or your own business, you're creating value. That's what you do. But it's important to us to think about the value that already exists and how you can protect and grow that value. Value centers the conversation. We have identified 18 orphan risks. And if you just start going on what could go wrong, what if this happened, what if that, you can spend a lot of time and energy and not get a lot out of it thinking about what could go wrong. By starting with value, understanding what's most meaningful to your stakeholders, you can, again, then understand the key risks and begin to navigate that risk landscape successfully. Again, risk innovation looks at risk as a threat to value, which is why we always start with value. Orphan risks, these are modern risks, unconventional risks from new technologies, innovative ideas, and shifting norms. And they need more than conventional risk management tools. They're not often easily quantifiable. They don't necessarily fall on the chart of high probability, high impact, right? We're talking about a whole landscape and a way of navigating through that. So the three categories we have here: organizational, social, and technological risks. And I'm really interested in exploring how risks work together. There's not just a risk of ethics, but also privacy, loss of agency. I'm throwing a bunch out here. But I really like to explore. And I think what mapping the risk landscape really does is allow you to see how those risks might kind of play together and how you can plan around and avoid them. My next slide, Brent, is just to show kind of all the risks that, that we have identified. And what I'm going to pop in the chat right now, I've already shared with you a link to our definition card. So how do we know more about those risks? But the link I've just shared is to help get at what risks might be most applicable to you, to your project, product, or organization. And so what we've done is we've written a number of questions, and we can either kind of go through some of these during our Q&A time, or again, just on your own time, look through those questions. And if one really stands out to you as applicable to your current project or building your own business, read through that question and then take a look at the risks that I've listed next to each question. That can help you see where to start, and again, which risks might be most applicable. Okay, next slide. We're almost done. I'm going to wrap up by reminding you about the risk innovation approach and what we look at. Value. If you're counting, I don't know, maybe I've talked about value 300 times in the last 10 minutes. It's the most important piece. It's identifying who your stakeholders are and what is most important to them. And from there, you can identify what threatens that value. Those are our orphan risks. But I would be remiss to suggest that risk innovation is just a thought exercise. It is not. It's actionable. It's practical. We want you to start acting now. Moving forward with intentionality is what risk innovation is all about. Seeing from different lenses what's out there, what lies ahead, and how you can navigate toward a successful outcome. And we can start with small steps, really short-term steps that build on each other, and over time grow into a successful risk mitigation strategy. So if you have very little time and very little resources, you can still start. You can still think about and navigate through that risk landscape. And what we have here is our risk innovation planner. This was the first tool I ever created for the Risk Innovation Nexus. I've linked to it here in the chat, and it houses everything we've just talked about. On the front page, you'll see a place to record areas of value for each of your key stakeholders. Below that, you'll see a place to note some of those risks, what threatens that area of value. And then at the bottom of the first page, a way to maybe add some meaningful notes there about risks, which are most applicable and which you'd like to start with. On the second page is a place for action steps. What are you going to do? Why and how are you going to do it? And what's the outcome you hope to achieve? In using in employing a risk innovation approach and using tools like the Risk Innovation Planner on a consistent basis, you'll see that those short and small steps add up over time. And that's the risk mitigation strategy that can come in handy throughout a current project, a new project, and maybe even a new business. I think that's my last slide. Thanks. I'm ready for some questions if you have any. Otherwise, hopefully everything I've thrown out there in the chat, you'll find useful and we'll be able to take with you.
That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Marissa. Really appreciate your time and energy. And I also want to thank myself for being such a great slide clicker, even though I screwed up several times. Marissa, you're great. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but really looking forward to a fantastic interaction with the audience here moving forward. And if you're watching on YouTube, we'll go ahead and put all of these amazing resources, the links, into the comment section of our video. So we'll be right back.